Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking tofu. So if you want to see tofu made two different ways, stick around. We're getting into it right now. Okay, let's talk tofu. But before we do, my name is Manya and I've lost 28 pounds on the WW Purple Plan by primarily eating a whole food plant-based diet. So what that means is I try whenever possible to eat food in their original form. So not a lot of processed food and not a lot of packaged food. I've also been a vegetarian for over 20 years, and at this point I'm almost vegan minus a couple of things like fat-free Greek yogurt and those Laughing Cow cheese wedges. But today, by request, I am going to show you how to cook tofu two ways. I'm first going to make a tofu kale scramble for breakfast, and then I'm going to show you how to marinate tofu so that you can grill it. I don't want to say like a steak, but I'll say like a steak so you understand sort of what it's going to look like. Tofu is intimidating for a lot of people, and I think that's because they've only ever had it badly. Tofu doesn't have a lot of its own flavor, so what you have to think about when you make tofu is that it takes on the flavor of whatever is around it. So unlike meat, which has its own flavor, tofu really is kind of nothing, but it gives you a bite, it's a great mouthfeel, and it's high in protein. And frankly, soy is really good for you, despite what you've read. It is a product that is very, very healthy, especially for women as they enter menopause. First things first, let's talk about tofu as an ingredient. Now, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but what I do want to talk to you about is how to buy it in the store. One of the things that I rely on very heavily when I buy tofu is the protein content of the tofu itself. Not because I'm trying to eat higher protein, but because the higher the protein number, the higher the protein content, the firmer the tofu is going to be. It's important that you not rely on the packaging, which says firm, very firm, soft, silken. Those are words that you'll see a lot. I have found that sometimes when manufacturers say it's a firm tofu, it's actually not. And the way I can tell is by looking at the protein count. So a silken tofu is almost like water. It's very, very soft, and you can use that in things like baking, smoothies. I don't use a lot of silken tofu. I'm not really that into it. For me, the higher the protein number, the higher the protein count, the firmer the tofu, the better. The best tofu I have found comes from Sprouts Farmers Market, and it is this one. It says high protein, it says extra firm, super firm actually, but what I want you to notice is the protein number here, which says 14. 14 is very high. It's the highest protein number I've ever seen in a packaged tofu. Usually you see around 8 or 9 when you're talking about firm. So if you have a Sprouts in your area, I highly recommend this one. The other thing you want to do if you're going to make the two types of tofu dishes I'm going to show you today is to press out the water. You can do this in a couple of different ways. You can take the block of tofu and put it on a plate with a towel underneath and then pile a bunch of heavy things on top, a pan and a pile of books, and you can get very creative. You're trying to get as much water out as possible. When you get serious, if you get serious about tofu, you may want to invest in a tofu press. And this is one I found on Amazon. It was not very expensive. It is called, let's see, I will link it below. It's called Two Press. This is the brand. It's made of bamboo and it's very simple. It has a grate at the bottom where the water comes out. And then this press, I can just wind it and press it down. And I like a very dry tofu. So I will press it overnight sometimes. And then it's caught in this container. And let's see if I can, I'm gonna tilt you and see if I can show you how much water came off. I don't know if you can see it. How much water came off of just this one block of tofu. It's quite a bit. If you don't press your tofu, it's not gonna hurt it. It'll be fine, you can still cook with it. But I find that the drier, the better when it comes to these two dishes that I'm gonna show you. So what I wanna make for you today, as I mentioned before, is a tofu kale scramble, which you can eat for breakfast or lunch or dinner, but it's perfect for breakfast. And then I'm gonna show you how to marinate some tofu steaks and then grill them up. So let's get started. Okay, so the first part of the tofu scramble is to take half of the block of tofu. See, it's half. The other half I'm going to use to show you how to make the steaks. And you can see this is super, super dry. If you've ever taken tofu out of the package, you know that it doesn't come out like this. It's usually encased in water or liquid, and this is just from pressing it for so long. So all I'm going to do is crumble it. You're essentially, think of it as making an egg scramble. So you want to crumble it into little pieces. Sort of like when you scramble an egg, it turns into the little curds, which they're probably not called curds, but I think you get my point. That's essentially what you want to do here. So I'm just using my hands to do this until I have small pieces. Now this next part is not required, but I find it looks more appetizing when it has more of an egg look. And the way that you achieve that is by adding turmeric. But you don't want to go crazy on the turmeric because turmeric can get kind of bitter if you use too much of it. So I'm going to use half a teaspoon of turmeric in here. And then because turmeric is really good for reducing inflammation, but it absorbs into your bloodstream better if it has pepper with it. So you never want to make anything turmeric without black pepper. And then I'm going to add some salt, and I'm just going to mix this all up. And I know it doesn't look like much now, but when we're cooking it in a pan, it will start to look egg-like and more yellow as the tofu cooks. Okay, I'm gonna show you how unbelievably easy a tofu scramble is. So in this pot, I have a little olive oil. I don't count cooking oil, but if you do, you can use spray oil, or frankly, you can saute in water. It is not a big deal. You can make this totally 0 points if you want. So to this, I'm going to add some diced onions. I always keep diced onions in my fridge. Do a big batch on the weekends. It makes life much, much easier. I'm going to cook this for just a couple of minutes until it is translucent. Once your onions are translucent, it's really a choice as to what kind of flavors you want. I'm just going to add some granulated garlic, but at this point, you could easily add any kind of spice that you like. You could add some turmeric to this. You could add some chili spice. You can make it spicy. You can really make it whatever you want. If you take these simple base recipes, it makes it so much easier to personalize it to your taste. In my house, I tend to go a little bit bland on the cooking because then we can each put whatever we want on it. My husband really likes hot sauce. I'm not such a huge fan of hot sauce. I like nutritional yeast and a little salt. So if you keep your meal bland, it's easy for folks to make it whatever they want it to be. Once your onions are translucent, then what you want to do is add your tofu. Now you can eat tofu, you don't have to cook tofu. You can eat it raw. I wouldn't eat it with raw turmeric. That probably wouldn't taste very good. But really what we're trying to do here is just infuse some flavor, bring it up to temperature, and it'll taste even better. So you can probably see, at least to me, it looks a lot like egg. And as we cook it even more, I think it looks even closer to looking like egg. Just moving it around the pan. The longer you cook this, it will start to caramelize. So if you like a little bit of a crust on your tofu, you can let it sit for a while in the pan and let it develop a crust. It will brown up. There's no fat. And if you make this without the oil, there's really no fat. So it's not like meat where it'll caramelize from the fat, but certainly if you leave it in a hot pan long enough, it will develop a little bit of a crust. So once you feel like it's at the temperature that you want it to be and it feels like it's warm, you can add whatever veggies you want. Now all I'm going to add is kale, but there have definitely been times that I've put chopped bell pepper in here. You could put asparagus, you could put frozen broccoli, cook it and put the broccoli in here. You could add potatoes, anything you want you can put in here. What I wanted to show you was just a really, really basic tofu scramble. And then you just kind of make it to what you like to eat. You could even eat it just like this if you want, but I try to get greens into every meal that I eat if I can. So for me, adding all this kale is a really easy way to get my greens. So I just dump the kale on top, and then I'm slowly going to stir it in until the kale is incorporated in with the tofu. And really from here, all you're doing is wilting the kale until it's at your desired consistency. This scramble keeps really well. So for example, it's Sunday afternoon. I'm not eating breakfast until tomorrow, so this will probably be either 2 or 3 days worth of breakfast this week. And the beautiful thing about vegetarian food, unlike meat, is that you don't have to worry about it spoiling as quickly as you do with meat products. So this can probably sit in my fridge all week, and I could alternate days with oatmeal if I wanted, or whatever I feel like doing. But to me, this is a great thing to prep on a Sunday afternoon for a work week breakfast. Okay, so I think that's pretty well incorporated. And now it's just a matter of cooking down the kale. Now I've had some requests from people about how to cook greens. For me, I like a hearty green that doesn't go too mushy. So if you think about cooked spinach, for example, I can't really do cooked spinach. It makes me feel kind of gross. I like a kale, a collard, a chard, those kind of greens that really hold their shape. For me, in my opinion, it's very hard to overcook kale, which is why I like it so much. But you can see it does cook down, and it is getting a little softer. And really, this is the whole dish. So if you have been intimidated by tofu, this is one really, really easy dish to make that's so good for you to have in the mornings, especially for those of you who like savory breakfasts. All right, that's a tofu scramble. So hang tight. I'm going to get into marinated tofu steaks next. Okay, let's marinate some tofu. So what I'm going to do today, now this is the other half of that tofu block that I pressed. So you can see this half is also quite dry. And when I say marinate, you don't have to do it for hours and hours. I'm simply going to slice it, put it into this bowl with a couple of ingredients that I'm going to show you, and then we're going to cook it in a pan. It's very simple. And then you can use this on top of a bunch of different things. You can put it on top of brown rice. You can make it with cooked veggies. You can eat it plain. It's deliciously salty. If you look online for tofu recipes, you'll see that there's a lot of Asian flavors, and that's what I'm going to do today. But think of it this way. Anything that is liquid, you can cook with tofu steaks. So if you want to go sort of more Mexican flavors, you could do chipotle and adobo and a little water and some spices and cook it up that way. Today we just are going to go more Asian, but you are certainly not wedded to that just because it's tofu. Okay, so because this is so high protein, it's very easy to cut and it holds its structure. So you can see, look, I'm no chef. Do you see how uneven that is? That would drive some people crazy. But it's very easy to slice when it's super high protein like this, which is why this is my favorite. So I'm going to get 5 slices out of this, and that should be plenty for the pan that I have heating on the stove. So let's talk about the liquid. So to this liquid, I'm going to put some diced onions. I always keep a container of diced onions in my fridge. I dice it myself because I constantly need it, and so it's nice to not have to dice as needed. And then I am going to add some soy sauce to this. Now you can use any kind of soy sauce. It doesn't have to be less sodium. I think this is just what I happen to buy. You can use tamari if you like that better. You can use liquid aminos. I'm just using soy sauce. So I'm going to use quite a bit, because remember what you're trying to do is coat the pieces of tofu. And then I'm going to use a miso paste. This is a brown rice miso. This just adds a particular flavor that I enjoy. There's lots of different kinds of miso. I just happen to have the brown rice one, and it's a thick paste. So let me show you. You see it coming out? So I'm going to use about that much, not a huge amount. And I'm going to, and I think this needs just a little more liquid. So I'm going to grab some water and put that in there as well, just to give it a little more liquid for the tofu to be in. And then from here, I'm going to grab some granulated garlic. I buy a big one at Costco. And that's it. And then from here, what I want to do is just stick the tofu pieces in here and start to get them wet, basically. Especially with a high protein tofu like this, it is hard to get it to absorb flavors. So you can marinate this for hours and hours and it might penetrate a little bit better. I can never think ahead like that. So this is the best I'm gonna do. And then I'll take you over to the stove and I will show you what to do next. All right, a little oil on the stove. Again, I do not count cooking oil. So if you do count cooking oil on WW, it's totally fine. You have a couple of options. You can either use a spray oil here for 0 points, or you can just put a little water. You do not need to use oil. And then from here, I'm just going to take my tofu and lay it in the pan. if my oil got a little hot. We'll just roll with it. So just put the slices of tofu down in the pan. And then just pour the marinade on top. You can also start with the onions if you'd like to brown them up at the beginning. And you don't need to cook tofu. It's a product that can be eaten raw, and many people do. So really what you're trying to do here is just infuse it with flavor. It's not really about cooking it to temperature. And if you're new to vegetarian cooking and you're used to cooking meat, that's a really important distinction. It's almost never about getting something to a particular temperature for safety reasons. These foods are safe to eat raw. You're just cooking them for flavor, you're cooking them for comfort, you're cooking them for appearance. So that's what we're trying to do here. Really what I'm doing is cooking this at a fairly medium to high heat, and I'm just trying to let it absorb and caramelize on the outside. That's something that I want to see for this particular type of cooking tofu. Starting to look good. Just going to cook it a little bit longer, and then I'm going to flip them. So I hope what you're seeing with these tofu dishes is how fast and easy they are to make. And I wish that YouTube had smell-o-vision, because if you could smell this, oh, it smells so good. Okay, let's take a look. Maybe a little bit longer. You can make sandwiches out of this, or wraps, if that's what you like. Anything where you want that sort of flavor bomb with salt. That's what this tastes quite a bit like. If you're a salt person, you will definitely like this tofu. Okay, I think I am going to flip them. You can see how much of the liquid has absorbed, which is usually a good sign. And then you can see how brown it is on the other side, which is good for caramelization. Apologies for the dishwasher that's in the background. I'm recording so many videos for you guys that I have to run the dishwasher a lot. I hope you're finding these helpful. Please let me know if there's other content you'd like to see. This tofu video is by request from one of my viewers. And I'm happy to cook anything that you see me eat during my What I Eat in a Day videos to help you be successful on your journey. So now we're just going to let this sit, let it continue to cook and continue to absorb. The beauty of tofu is that it is a clean slate, essentially. I mean, you just make it into what you want, and you can rest in the knowledge that it's really, really good for you. So give tofu a shot and let me know in the comments below. Did you try one of the recipes I made today? Did you try something else? Did you have an epic fail? Because that will happen. I've thrown away some tofu in my life. How's it going for you? As always, it's good to see all of you. Good luck on your weight loss journey. Together, we can do this. Bye.